Welcome to the Hope Natural Health Podcast. I'm Dr. Erin Ellis, your host. On this show, we discuss all things health, hormones, and happiness with a little side of this thing called life. Amanda Chocko is a nutritional therapy practitioner, sleep coach, and author of the book, Relax, Sleep, Thrive, Your 5-Week Journey to Peaceful Restorative Sleep. Her passion for helping women navigate chronic health conditions led her to notice many were struggling with insomnia, just as she had. In 2020, her own insomnia became chronic, prompting her to dive deep into sleep research. By uncovering a holistic approach addressing the root causes, she transformed her sleep quality. Now dedicated to helping others conquer their sleep struggles, Amanda draws from her knowledge, experience, and newfound purpose. Having been through it herself, she is equipped to guide individuals through reclaiming restful nights and achieving peaceful slumber. If you are a patient of mine, you know that sleep is probably the first thing we will address if it's not happening. And I love that she had in her bio about the quality of sleep, because that is way more important than the quantity. So welcome to the show, Amanda. I am very excited to dive more into insomnia and how we can really work on our sleep to improve our overall health.
Yeah. Thanks, Dr. Erin. I'm really excited to be here. Appreciate the opportunity.
Of course. So before we dive into insomnia, I'd love to hear more about your own struggle with sleep and really how you got into, helping women improve their sleep.
Sure. I became a nutritional therapy practitioner back in 2017, and that was due to other health conditions that I was having, which was inflammatory bowel disease, which I suffered with for decades. And I was really going the conventional approach and, realized that medications and the potential surgery could not be the only way. So at that time, I really dug into research, also started seeing a functional medical practitioner, and went down all these rabbit holes to find out I had heavy metal toxicity, leaky gut. I just had food sensitivities and all these things going on, and really was working on that with him, and was able to eventually pull myself out of that chronic flare that I was going through. So in that time, I was blogging a lot about my journey and all the different things I was trying with nutrition and sleep and stress management and some of the other protocols I was doing. And a lot of people began to ask me questions about their own health. So I really enjoyed it, to the point where I decided to go to school and get some credentials behind me and become a nutritional therapy practitioner. And when I graduated, I got further education, really focusing on autoimmunity, gut health, blood sugar regulation. And that is what I was helping my clients with at that point. But inevitably, even though they didn't come to me with sleep issues, it was very prevalent within all of them. So, just as you do, that was something that I had to address with them if we were going to, look at them as a whole person and try to help them with their condition. And, through the years, I've had battles with insomnia and, sleepless nights. But it wasn't until 2020, as you mentioned in my intro, during the pandemic, that my insomnia became completely chronic. And I was going weeks and months with terrible sleep, walking around like a zombie. And then I decided, again, I have to get to the root cause, dug into the research, and really started experimenting with the different methodologies that I was learning about, documenting all of these things. And I put together a 5-week program, which I also turned into my book, Relax, Sleep, Thrive. So right now I've completely pivoted my practice to focus on sleep, still helping people with those other issues, but sleep is the foundation of everything, I believe. And you need to get that right to have everything else to be working.
Yeah. So why do you think, what are some of the common root causes of chronic insomnia that are often overlooked? We wake up and we just sit there and stare at the wall, and it's like, well, I just can't sleep. And people just think it's normal. It's normal. It's not normal to sleep, to not sleep.
Yeah. There are a lot of different things that could be causing people to have bad sleep. Just like the foundations of just sleep hygiene. That's
Mm-hmm.
usually the first place we go is that are you on a regular sleep schedule?
Mm-hmm.
Do you have an optimal sleep environment? Are you managing stress effectively? Because stress is such a huge reason that people either can't fall asleep because they can't shut off their brains. Their cortisol and stress hormones are raging,
Mm-hmm.
and waking in the middle of the night and having that same issue. So those are the first things we look at, but it's really, good sleep starts the minute we wake up, and there's so many things
Mm.
that we do throughout our day that can impact our sleep negatively or positively, and sometimes it's just a matter of changing the timing of those things. So, caffeine is a big one. Having a caffeine curfew, your caffeine tolerance will change over the years. I know mine has. And
Mm-hmm.
caffeine is a stimulant. It's not going to help you sleep at all, but it also blocks adenosine, which is another chemical that's in our body that is helping us build our sleep pressure throughout the day. And caffeine blocks those
Hmm.
receptors. So you're not building up that sleep pressure. So really looking at caffeine. I think another thing that people don't consider is alcohol.
Mm.
A lot of people, myself included, used to be, I'm going to have a nice glass of wine to, wind down before bed. And, you know, alcohol is a sedative, so it'll initially help you fall asleep, but
Mm-hmm.
inevitably you may be waking up at 2, 3 in the morning, and then your, brain turns on, you can't get back to sleep, or it just messes with your sleep quality. And then
Mm-hmm.
there's meal timing, light exposure, supplements and medications can impact that. Hormone, different
Mm-hmm.
times in our lives where we're going through perimenopause, menopause, pregnancy, post pregnancy, all of these things
Mm-hmm.
can impact sleep.
For you, what did you find was your root cause of that chronic insomnia?
Mine was definitely stress
Mm-hmm.
related, and
I
also
was going to guess. Well, because you said it was in the pandemic, and I'm like, well, I'm going to put two and two together. I bet it's stress. And honestly, Amanda, I would say probably 80% of listeners would say that it would be, or I mean, even listeners too, but what I see in practice is stress. But the stress
Yeah.
is like causing them to maybe eat later at night or have that glass of wine or have the extra caffeine to go. So it's not like those things are good, but then we're looking at like, well, why do you need those things? And then the underlying cause is typically the stress.
Yeah. It's so true. And we are just, I always like compare life now to like Little House on the Prairie days when, we rose with the sun, went
Mm-hmm.
out and, started working on the farm or, being outside a lot in
Mm-hmm.
nature and natural sunlight, no exposure to technology
Right?
whatsoever. You only knew about the news, in your hometown unless you got some
Mm-hmm.
type of a telegram from somewhere. And then,
Yeah.
we went to bed shortly after sunset
Mm-hmm.
because, electricity wasn't a thing yet. And you compare that to our lives now where, it's 24/7, news in our face, we have our families, we have our jobs, we're running around trying to do a million things, barely taking care of ourselves because that's usually on the back burner, and
Mm-hmm.
just rushing right up to bedtime where, as I said earlier, you don't give yourself time to wind down and de-stress or deal with the things that are stressing you in your life.
Mm-hmm.
And cortisol is the yin to the yang of melatonin. So if you have cortisol going, through your system, it's really, you're not going to be able to fall asleep.
Yeah, it impacts our melatonin. Can you speak a little bit about melatonin? There's a lot of conflicting information, and some people say we shouldn't take melatonin, but then there's some that say melatonin is helpful. So, can you speak about really the benefits of melatonin and really how it's released and
Sure.
when it's inhibited?
Yeah. So ideally, you're secreting your own melatonin at the right time, and you don't
Mm-hmm.
have to resort to supplementation. So things that could help with that again is not being stressed. melatonin is secreted in darkness. So in the evening, you want to dim those lights, have your sleep environment as dark as possible. If you do choose to look at devices, I wear blue light blocking glasses, and that helps my own melatonin. If there's any light for me, I need a sleep mask. So, there are different things to try to manage your own circadian rhythm. So your cortisol is high in the morning and then lowers throughout the day, and then that melatonin begins to kick in at night. But, melatonin supplementation can come in handy on a temporary basis. It is not something that you want to depend on long term. I have used melatonin myself just to get my circadian rhythm set. Sometimes if I'm traveling and I'm in different time zones for jet lag, I might do so. But the things that you would want to look out for melatonin is first realizing that it's not regulated in any way. And quite often what it says on the bottle as far as the strength of it is not always what is in the actual pill itself. And also the melatonin, the milligrams are way higher than we need. You'll see 3, 5, 10 milligrams. You want to take, if you are going to take it, the smallest amount. So with my clients and in times with myself, I got the lowest dose I could find, which would be like a 3 milligram, get a pill cutter and quarter that. The other thing is you would want to have a time release, slow time release one, because melatonin is also, if you just get straight up melatonin, it will wear off in the middle of the night and you'll wake up. So you want that time release. There are studies that say, and like you said, there's controversy of, oh no, you'll become dependent on it. And then there's others that say not. And I think in a pinch, it could be helpful, but it's not the answer. You want to make sure all of your other things with your sleep hygiene and all the other things that could be causing an issue that you're working on first, and only use that when you have to.
Good. A lot of people say that they take melatonin, they wake up feeling groggy. Isn't that a sign of like maybe too much melatonin? They probably didn't need the melatonin because their body had enough already, or is it producing enough? Yeah.
Yeah. If you take too much, you will be groggy in the morning. And if you're waking up with an alarm and the alarm wakes you and you're in deep sleep, you'll also be groggy. So, it could be either of those reasons, but yeah, melatonin is something that you would look at. Usually, if you could work with a practitioner while you're doing so, that's something that I would advise. But it's not a first resort. As it's not a first resort to do any of these sleep medications. There's so many of them out there, and sometimes they're necessary, but you don't want to just go willy-nilly on it and just use it as just like say, to heck with everything else. I'll, sleep whenever, different times all day, do all these things, and then I'm just going to take something to knock me out. That's not.
Yeah, that's not fixing anything.
Solution.
No. So when we're talking about sleep hygiene, you touched on a few things, but let's share some more practical tips for creating like the optimal sleep environment. So if someone is struggling to sleep or have some, wakings and not sleeping as well as they would like, what would you recommend they start with?
Well, we talked about light. So that melatonin kicks in darkness. So have your room as dark as possible. Temperature is really important as well. You want to lower your temperature, say, 65-ish, give or take degrees, because your body temperature needs to go down a couple of degrees to sleep. And that's another thing that could wake you in the night, is if you wake up because you're overheated as well. So you want that temperature optimal. And then there's, if you're going through hormonal things that are causing night sweats or anything, there's like cooling pads and fans and like different things that you could do for that. You want it to be clutter free. So your bed, you want to associate your bed with sleep. And or intimacy with your partner, but you shouldn't be working in your room. It's not ideal to have your television in there and just having a mess. Cluttered space is cluttered mind, and that's not going to help you sleep. So really it's, darkness, temperature, comfortable bedding, whatever that means to you. If you have the same mattress for the last 20 years, you might want to look at that. If you're waking up with neck aches or back aches or anything like that, you could look into your bedding as a possible thing as well.
So for those that, think they sleep well and like, oh, I sleep really well, but they wake up tired. They don't feel refreshed. They really need the nap. Obviously, in my brain, it's like, well, there's probably some hormonal thing going on, or the quality of the sleep isn't as optimal as it should be. So I measure my sleep. I have the Aura Ring to measure my sleep, which is really, really insightful as far as light sleep, REM sleep, deep sleep. So do you recommend, someone that says that they actually feel like they sleep well, but they're still waking up tired and not as refreshed, to have some sort of sleep tracking device, or is that not necessary?
Yeah, well, there are two ways you can go about that. I have an Aura Ring as well that I use, and it's also been very helpful for me. But when I work with my clients, I have them manually track their sleep and track it against all the things that we talked about earlier with what they do day to day to see where the connection points are. So it's really helpful to see your sleep stages, with some type of a sleep tracker. But you also want to be mindful of, okay, if I'm not sleeping, if I'm not going into my sleep cycles as I should, what could be causing that? Caffeine, it doesn't only prevent you sometimes from being able to fall asleep, but it can prevent you from going into your sleep stages and keeping yourself in that light sleep, as well as different medications, stress, anything like that. So all the things that we talked about, you want to have that in place, but definitely a sleep tracker could work, because if you are sleeping 7 to 9 hours sleep, which is the general recommendation, and you are not feeling refreshed when you wake up, then that is something to look at. But as you said, it could be other reasons as well, other
for sure,
chronic conditions.
I want to go back a couple things that you said about the caffeine blocking adenosine, which affects our sleep pressure?
Yes.
What is sleep pressure? That is a new term I'm not familiar with.
Okay, sure. So sleep pressure, well, the adenosine builds up throughout the day, and the sleep pressure is your sleep debt. So the longer you are awake without any interference of caffeine or other things that might impact that is what makes you feel sleepy towards the evening.
Okay.
So you have your circadian rhythms where your melatonin starts kicking in, and your body is on this regularity schedule, and then building the sleep pressure. So it's caffeine. The other thing that can hinder your sleep pressure are naps too late in the day.
Okay. Yeah.
So, having too long of naps, because then that's going to take away from that natural sleepiness that develops throughout the day.
Got it. Okay. So what advice do you have for women who are struggling with, both chronic health conditions and insomnia?
Yeah, it's tricky because there's kind of this chicken egg thing going on there, right? I mean, quite often it's the condition that could be impacting the sleep, and certainly bad sleep is not helping your condition. So I think, on the side of the condition itself, I mean, there are things like, blood sugar dysregulation, or type 2 diabetes, is one thing, going through these hormonal things, whatever the case may be. Not that that's a chronic condition, but it could be chronic over time. It's definitely working with your practitioner on managing whatever the way that is in that conversation, as well as still taking into consideration being on that sleep schedule, having that sleep environment, having that wind down routine, looking throughout your day at the different things that are impacting your sleep, managing your stress, breath work, meditation, journaling, to-do lists and worry lists before bed. Any way you could help yourself get to sleep is ideal, but also giving yourself some grace. You have to listen to your body, and you're not going to have perfect nights all the time, and you can't beat yourself up about that. You just have to listen to your body that next day. And if it says take a nap, if it says rest, that's what you do. It really depends on the condition and, the severity of it at that time. But it's kind of, this juggling effect that goes on between the two.
Yeah. You talked a little bit about nutrition and food before we or food or dinner at our last meal. In office, I see a lot of I help primarily women too, and most women are consuming the most amount of calories at dinner, which is a lot of food for your body to process and digest. And then say maybe you add that glass of wine or maybe a little sweet treat because you put the kids down and you want to reward yourself. So how much does nutrition play a role in achieving like restorative sleep?
Yeah, it plays a role in a number of ways. So we talking about, just that meal timing. You really want to try to finish that last meal 2 to 3 hours before bed, because there's so many things, right? You don't want to feel all full. You don't want to have, gastrointestinal issues, from eating like that. Digestion also heats up your body. So we talked about, wanting to keep your body temperature low. When it comes to the food itself, having a balanced, whole food, nutrient-dense diet is really optimal for everything in our life. And it's also important for sleep, because if you have different nutritional deficiencies, that could impact your sleep. If you have blood sugar dysregulation because you're not having balanced meals and you're not dealing with that, if your blood sugar drops in the middle of the night, that's an emergency to your body. Your cortisol is going to fire off, and that's going to wake you up. So nutrition, a lot of processed foods, artificial ingredients can cause all kinds of like food sensitivities and things like that. If you feel your heart racing after you eat, you have to think about like, what did I eat? Because if we eat a food that we're sensitive to, our body is a stressor to our body, and our pulse will increase by 6 or more beats per minute. So if you go to bed and you feel your heart racing, you think, okay, what did I eat that may have caused that? And that's where that journaling comes in. Yeah. To say, okay, every time I eat this meal or have this snack, drink this wine, whatever the case may be, I notice that my sleep quality is severely impacted. So nutrition makes a big difference, as does, exercise, movement, all the pillars of health, where sleep is just one of those foundations that, they all impact each other.
This is probably off topic, but I have a question about dreams. And I recently listened or read or something about dreams, and we all dream, but oftentimes we're like, oh my gosh, I had like crazy weird dreams. And I read that if you actually remember your dreams, it's a sign that you got some deep delta restorative sleep. Is that true? And then speak a little bit about dreams and like what they actually mean as far as sleep goes.
Yeah. So dreaming happens during our REM sleep. So, we have a deep sleep, light sleep, REM sleep. So REM sleep is, when we're dreaming, we're consolidating memories, we're processing our emotions, all of our neurotransmitters are being regulated at that time, and our minds are very, very active. So it's normal to have that. Sometimes it depends, when you wake up during the night as to whether you remember those dreams or not. So from what I understand, if you wake up, usually we wake up out of REM sleep. It's harder to wake up out of deep sleep. So if you remember your dreams, it's just, you woke up at that time and you they were so vivid and real to you that you tended to remember it. And sometimes if we don't write those down right away, they'll fade from our memories, throughout the day. If you say, I don't dream, I never remember my dreams, it doesn't mean you're not dreaming. But that's also when you want to look at your sleep, those cycles. If you did get like an Oura ring or some type of sleep tracker, say, am I not getting enough REM sleep? I don't remember having any dreams. And then, going back to the sleep quality. But I'll have to do some more research as to what you alluded to, because I hadn't read that.
Yeah. And then is it best to get, the most amount of REM sleep, the sleep stage, or is it good to get equal parts? Like, because on Oura, it reads light, awake, obviously, REM and deep. So I average about the same amount of REM and deep, but is our goal to get more REM or more deep, or does it matter?
I think it's like 20% of each, and then like the rest of your sleep. But that changes as we age. Yeah. You'll tend to get less deep sleep, as you get older. Yeah. And younger people might get more. So it's really
age dependent.
Depends. Yeah.
Okay. And I think it's also important to point out that we want to make sure the trends are stable and I think consistent for your own body, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And that's what Oura does, right? It kind of tracks you against yourself. Yeah. And so you can't really compare to another person. Right. And, have you heard of the new term orthosomnia?
Orthosomnia. I have not. Tell me. I want to say like bone insomnia. I'm thinking like ortho.
Well, you've heard the term like orthorexic, because for people that are like clean eating and they're like obsessed with clean eating. Well, orthosomnia now with all the sleep trackers is when people are becoming too obsessed with their sleep quality.
Oh, how funny.
They're doing everything they can to get the highest score for themselves, to the point where it's causing them stress and it's ruining their sleep. So
I was going to say,
a new thing.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it is a big thing out there, tracking, and I think it's really helpful, but you can get obsessed with it. And also too, I try and tell myself when I wake up, like there's days where I wake up and I'm like, man, I slept good. And then I look at my sleep score and I'm like, huh? I'm like, it said I didn't sleep good. And it's telling me to like rest today. And I'm like, man, I feel like I can climb a mountain. So obviously like, don't take it for what it's worth sometimes. I mean, is it, I think there's a lot of, I guess, enhancing maybe of the things. Like my app or my ring is, I think, susceptible to my dog moving around in the bed and not necessarily me moving around in the bed, when it tracks movement and stuff. So it says that I'm really restless, but I don't feel like I'm restless. And I only know that because it only started when we got a new puppy that sleeps right next to me. And that wasn't something that happened in the past. And now it's saying that I have like restless sleep. And I'm like, but I don't really move. The dog is moving, and it, obviously by my hand, because he sleeps like near my torso. So I'm thinking maybe that's tracking the restlessness. I don't know. That's just my theory. But I take these readings or the trackers as like, great surface help and education because it can really make you aware of some things. Like I know that my body is super susceptible and highly sensitive to food when I eat it late. But I wouldn't have really known how much it affected me until I started tracking it and watching things, and that's why I try and eat earlier, because I know I get better restful sleep if I, stay away from food later. So it can be really insightful, but you can definitely go down crazy rabbit holes with it, and then that makes everything worse. So that's interesting, but it makes sense. I'm not surprised. So awesome, Amanda. Well, I could talk about sleep all day because it's so important. I love sleep. It's something that I've never compromised, even in medical school. I don't think I've ever pulled an all-nighter because I know how much sleep is important for my body and what I really practice, teaching and helping women educate. It's like, we got to fix your sleep. So I'll wrap it up with one question I ask all my podcast guests. What would be your best or favorite health tip that you can share with the audience?
Be out in nature as much as possible. That'll help you de-stress, help set your circadian rhythms, and keep you away from the things that can cause havoc with your sleep and everything else.
Get some more vitamin N for nature, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I love that. Well, Amanda, thank you so much for being on the show. And I wish everyone a good, peaceful, restful night of sleep. Amanda has a book that's available on Amazon and a free How to Create Your Perfect Wind Down Routine on her website. So we'll make sure that we share all of that in the show notes. And again, sweet dreams, everyone. We'll see you again next week.